Hi, and welcome to today's Parent, where we provide you with information and connect you with experts to make your parenting journey a bit more easier. I'm your host, Christine Casina. On today's episode, we are talking about eating disorders in children and in teens. There are parents out there who are going through this, and I know this show is going to be very informative to you, something that is often misdiagnosed and unnoticed. In today's show, we have Nkatha, who's a nutritionist, Nkatha Mwenda, who's going to share with us what challenges our teens as children are going through when it comes to eating and specifically eating disorders. Nkatha, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I know our topic today is so very somber.
Yeah.
Let's take it from the very top. What is an eating disorder? What's an eating disorder?
Eating disorders are psychological disorders focused on distorted eating habits.
Right.
So when we talk about eating habits, we know how we should eat or have been trained to eat. You have your breakfast, lunch, dinner. You need to eat your veg. You need to eat your proteins, carbohydrates. When you have an eating disorder, you tend to avoid, you tend to despise the foods. Therefore, you stop eating. Yeah, and in some instances, you overindulge in the food.
Right.
But even when you overindulge, you purge it out because you were just eating for the sake, but because your fear is not to gain weight or to be obese, then that is the remedy. You know, it's mostly psychological. It's all in the mind.
So there's a link between eating disorders and mental health.
Oh yes, it is. It's all about the mind and how you perceive it. Yeah. So with many children, say you get teased. You're overweight or you don't look good, and especially children in sporty co-curricular activities.
Right.
Say you're a swimmer, and I'm talking about the children I have met and worked with, swimming, people who are gymnasts. So their body image is very crucial. So how they perceive themselves is very important. So if they ever feel they are not fitting to the body shape or size or weight for that profession,
right,
to their standards, then they harm themselves by restricting food, or even if they eat, they purge it out.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's all in the mind. It is the way they have perceived it.
Right.
It becomes a fixation. And we cannot ignore when people say, I'm eating clean. Because even children are saying, I'm eating clean. But in real sense, they're being overly sensitive on what they're eating, and then getting to a point where, because they've done their own research, Google is accessible, they start overanalyzing and saying, by the way, I shouldn't be eating fat. This food is not good. If I'm to eat carbohydrates, it has to be in this way. So because of that compulsiveness, then they start withdrawing from that particular food. And by the time you're a parent, you don't notice what was going on until physically you see a child is emaciated.
And in your experience, you've come across cases where kids are already dieting, like children dieting.
Yes, yes. People are on diets. Yeah, people are on diets. Again, whenever I get a parent or parents with a child with such a challenge, we sit down first with the child. Already the parents has expressed their concerns. We don't put a name to it until we sit with the child. Then, you finally understand. The child will keep saying, but I read, scientifically it's like this. I'm eating right. But at home, yes, they know the information, they have it, but at home, on the plate they're counting the number of peas, they're counting the number of beans, they're counting, or if it is an apple, they're cutting a miniature portion, and they say, I'm eating right, and it's us who are overeating. So that's when you start noticing there's a problem with the child.
Right.
But again, like we said, it's a mental issue, because it's a child who is fixated on the food, and to undo that, you need a mental health expert,
right,
to be able to guide them. For us, we can only emphasize how to eat healthy, and we can also help the child who has gotten to a point, where the body is almost shutting down. We can only help with the right nutrition plan, the right diet for that child to transition, and also emphasizing why these nutrients are important to be eaten in the right portions. Yeah, that's the most we can do.
Nkatha, when you talk about eating disorders in kids, or generally eating disorders, what are the eating disorders that you can share with us?
We have anorexia, and that is a condition where a person stops eating.
So you stop eating.
You restrict your eating.
You restrict your eating.
You restrict your eating. So this is noticed by drastic reduction of food portions. So it could be skipping meals, or when the person eats, they're eating very little food. So another thing is, with the restriction of eating, is the sole purpose is to lose weight. Yeah. So that's what
an obsession with my weight.
Exactly. So what is typical about this condition is they're not eating and the drastic weight loss. So you will also notice physically,
there has been,
weight reduction, drastic weight loss.
Right.
Yeah.
So apart from anorexia,
we have bulimia. This condition is different. Here, a person eats and indulges, like binge eating. You eat proper, In fact, someone may think you're a foodie, but behind closed doors, you will be quick to purge it out.
Right.
You could either vomit it, or you have laxatives which you take so that you can get it out from your system as soon as possible.
Okay.
Again, this is all about maintaining your weight or losing the weight, but you still want to eat. Yeah.
So same thing, obsession with
food,
with food and
the body.
Yeah, and the weight, of course.
Exactly. And this one is very dangerous, because if you're eating a lot of food, then vomiting it out, you can imagine all the gastric juices involved, the corrosion of the esophagus,
right,
mouth sores, tooth decay,
right,
because you're vomiting out the food you've just eaten. But this is not done in the open. So as a parent, you may not even be able to pick it up, but there are some telltale signs which you can be on the lookout for if you suspect your child is having challenges with food or perception to food.
Because I'm then wondering, if you see with anorexia, you can then see the drastic weight loss.
Yes.
But with bulimia, they're doing this privately. So how can you, like you've just said, the telltale signs, like when my child is bulimic, how can I tell?
Again, even with bulimia, you will lose the weight because you're eating and getting rid of that food, you're gagging. But you could also tell by, most children will have stomach upsets because you're already disturbing the digestive system. So frequent complaints of stomach pains or challenges with bowel movement. So those are the telltales, particularly stomach aches. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So are there risk factors that predispose a child or a teen to becoming anorexic or bulimic?
There are those that have been discussed. And number one that comes up is genetic. Just like any other of the conditions, we are used to the chronic lifestyle diseases.
So genes play a factor?
Genes do play a factor.
Right.
When it comes to depression, anxiety, because when you look clearly to such a disorder, it's all about how someone feels about themselves, some inadequacy of something. It's like a depression. Now you're reacting through the food. So that's one factor. The other factor is having a compulsiveness to yourself. You've heard of people who are neat freaks, or they come to a room, there's no order, they start fixing.
Some form of OCD.
Exactly. Disorder. So that also could be a factor. Whereby now you're picking the kind of food you will eat, or even the shape and the size. It becomes a fixation. And it could also be a deficiency of certain nutrients in the body, but particularly for the brain, in form of neurotransmitters. So that also should be taken care of. If you're not eating enough or the good kinds of food for your brain, you may be predisposed to health or the mental challenge we're talking about.
Okay. what are the effects on our children and our teens, and generally to any human being?
Okay.
What are the effects of eating disorders?
The effects are detrimental to the human body. Number one, remember, we are eating to nourish our bodies, to be healthy, yes? So once an anorexic person is withholding food and hence nutrients to live, then we interfere with all body systems. And number one would be they lose weight, they are a BMI that is lower, and you'll notice they tend to be very lean. They don't have that insulating layer of fat, which is very crucial. So most of these children will be cold all the time. You greet someone, they're cold. You want to give them a blanket, because again, you don't have a fat layer to insulate, because fat helps to insulate, to keep you warm. Number two, you'll notice most of these people who are of a very low weight will develop a layer of hair. Again, that's adaptive for the body because you're feeling cold, it's extreme. And so the body will form a layer of hair all through the body, just as a coping mechanism. That's again on the body. We also have low blood pressure. Again, your blood circulatory system is interfered with. So low blood pressure can lead to heart failure, obviously, because blood is not getting to the heart like it should to supply the nutrients and the oxygen. We are also talking about teenage girls who will have delayed period or no period or lack of menses because the hormonal system is interfered with. And definitely, what else can I think of?
And I'm just wondering, when it comes to self-esteem, as
Yes.
you know how it affects them.
Yes.
I'm sure it must be something that, being anorexic or bulimic
Obviously.
must have a big impact on their self-esteem.
Definitely, because remember, this child, when he or she looks at themselves in the mirror, they see overweight. And remember, at this time, they're already emaciated, they look, they're very underweight, but the way they perceive themselves, they look overweight. So there's a lot of teasing around them because people will always mention, hey, you need to eat. Most of the cases I have handled, most of the children are introverts or they're isolated. And they'll deliberately tell you, I don't have many friends now because they question my body size. And I look at myself and I'm okay. So I've avoided so-and-so, I've avoided certain people I used to hang out with because they will always tell me to eat. And I can't stand food and I can't stand the topic that is food. So definitely self-esteem comes down.
Right.
They will always, not all, but many will compare themselves to others. Because when you have a mental challenge, you'll always compare yourself to others. Why are the others' opinions had and not mine? I'll give you a very good example. There's a client we had, and as she spoke about food, she kept questioning the food choices her parents offered to the family. She was quick to say, is pizza healthy? It's this and this food. I keep telling them that it's not healthy. So for me, when I sit at the table, there's no way I will agree to eat such kind of food. And I will be verbal about it. But I get reprimanded or I get questioned about it. So they tend to be opinionated and feel that their opinion, it doesn't count because of maybe the situation they are in. Unfortunately, it draws them further back. Yeah, it draws them further back. And because they believe they're doing the right thing, unless you get an expert to deal with, a counselor or a psychologist, there's so much a parent can do. Yeah. So professionals come in handy in such a time because the child has completely refused to listen to your guidance because they feel the information they have is the right one. And nowadays kids have the information. They'll go to Google. Yeah. They'll research what are the foods that we should be eating. And what stands out for them is those ones that will cause you to gain weight. So they'll say fat is not good. It's not good because of, apart from being obese or overweight, it can lead to stroke or things like those, heart conditions. They're very knowledgeable. But now it is to help them understand that you need food and in the right quantities.
Right.
In her situation or his, they are now reducing it to drastic levels that is not sustaining their bodies.
Right.
So putting the logic to them, truth to them, is the main is the main focus at that point in time, hoping that they will understand it.
We are going to take a short break. In today's episode, we are talking about eating disorders in children and in teens. When we come back from the break, we are going to check in with Nkatha to share with us if it's possible to prevent eating disorders in our children and in our teens, and what we can do as their caregivers. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to today's episode of Today's Parent. In studio, we have Nkatha Mwenda, who's a nutritionist, and we are talking about eating disorders in children and in our teens. What we are going to tackle right now is if it's possible to prevent eating disorders and what we can do to manage them. Nkatha, prevention. Is it possible to prevent eating? I know at the beginning you had mentioned about the genetic connection to it, but is it possible to prevent eating disorders in our children and in our teens?
Yes, it's very possible. We'll start with what we eat, even from the formative years. It's very important for every caregiver, parent, to ensure their children are eating healthy. So you want to insist from the young age they have to eat their vegetables.
Right.
Many kids do not like vegetables, and many of them don't eat the vegetables because they don't like it, and the parents, don't mind it. But those vegetables and fruits help offer protective nutrients to the growing body. Again, fish is very important. You have to have omega-3s. And when you were growing up, you must have had cod liver oil.
Oh, yes, I remember those days.
What happened and the taste. So we need to have that from formative years, because that's what's brain food, to keep neurotransmitters healthy, the blood circulating to the brain tissues better.
Right.
So from a nutrition angle, it's balanced diet for kids of all ages. And the reason we insist is because today many kids are junking. They're eating a lot of food that has no nutrients. It's sugar. Sugar is not so good for the brain. So there's a way you can prevent by ensuring the nutrients for a healthy brain.
Right.
You start from there. Prevention also can be your children, just affirming them. Affirmation is very important. Most of these disorders, and the people we have met with, at our office, most of the kids are feeling lonely, are feeling depressed in one way because they are not accepted. So if we can love these children, and love just means affirming them, spending time with them. It's important to affirm your children, and that is to guide them in a very positive way. Even when they do wrong or make a decision that is not too good.
Be gentle with them.
Be gentle with them, because most of these children are taking things personally. Most of the children I have interacted with are saying, my mom is too harsh, or my dad doesn't understand me. So taking time to bond with your children, even if you have a busy schedule, the child feels wanted, the child feels loved. So that even when they go out and meet these cliques in school who say, oh, you're not cool because you don't do this, oh, they are affirmed, they are loved. They don't care what people throw at them, because they know my mom and dad has said I am beautiful, they love me, and I'm not loved based on whether I'm fat, whether I'm thin. So affirmation is very important. And I was saying, I have a 12-year-old son, and as he grows older, it's a reminder to keep that relationship. He loves PlayStation and Fortnite, which I can't stand. But I have learned to understand what it is about, and I'm guiding him in a direction that is good. Because when I would talk ill of that particular game, I noticed he was drifting. And when you find a child isolated, doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to communicate, you don't know what is going through their minds. And it could be a journey of self-awareness or rejection that they carry on in life, that can manifest in even other addictions. So just embrace them, guide them gently, and we could avert these disorders that are becoming rampant in our society.
You know, what I'm wondering is at what age, what age our kids, our children become aware of weight? You know, like how young, and I can imagine for girls, I'm just assuming for girls, it could be worse. Then assuming that when they look at themselves in the mirror, that I look fat, and verbalizing it.
Yeah.
And then to link that back to, I don't know, the way as moms, as dads, we view weight, or even comparing one sibling to another. You know, so and so, why can't you be like, you know, don't eat so much, and the base it sets for a child to then affect their self-esteem. I don't know what you can chip in when it comes to that.
It's you know, kids watch. You can speak all you are speaking, you can talk all you're talking, but they look at what you're doing. Your actions will speak louder. I'll talk about an age. You know, I've met a 9-year-old who has an eating disorder. So I believe it's the environment, just like you say. The environment is a very key factor, because at home, you need to ask yourself, even as parents, what are your habits in the home? There's some parents who will skip meals. There's a home you'll go to and they don't eat dinner. You know, the child is being told you have to eat your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and your snacks.
But
so in their mind, they are thinking, but dad doesn't,
this is not
but
what we
mom
do at
doesn't.
home.
Exactly. So that environment, the environment they are in matters. The information they are accessing, you know, on the internet or from their peers also matters.
Yeah.
But bottom line is we have to be particular about what we are doing. We have to be intentional. If we want to make changes, the changes are not to a particular child alone because this issue has come up, but it is for everybody in the family, so that even that particular child feels they're not weird or
and
awkward.
they're not picked, you know,
exactly.
They're not picked out from the rest of the siblings.
Exactly. So environment it matters, and us as caregivers and parents have to also be careful or how we speak, what we share, because most of the children's values are the parents' values in one way or another, or from another source. It could be even the help, the nannies, or those who are in the children's life, even the teachers, wherever we're interacting.
You know, bearing in mind that a teen going through, or just struggling with anorexia or bulimia, is so delicate, and their self-esteem is affected.
Yes.
How do you stage an intervention? How do you stage, for parents out there, possibly, you know, going through this, and they know they need to get help for their child?
Yes.
How do you stage an intervention gently?
Yes. Christine, there's points where there's no gentleness, you know, because this is now a matter of life and death.
Right.
So you need to approach professionals. You need to see a medical doctor. You can, there are children, so a pediatrician will assist. A nutritionist comes in to plan their diet. Then you also have to recognize, after the diagnosis is that it's an eating disorder, you have to include a mental health expert, so that you walk this journey with professionals. Many a times, many parents will, it's good to consult with others, but many a times you'll find they will resort to their own ways instead of experts. And by the time you're going to the expert, there's a lot of damage that has been done.
Right.
So parents, number one, don't take it personally.
So number one, don't take it personally.
Don't take it personally that you're the one to blame. You know, again, why many people delay taking their children to hospital is they wonder, what will the medic think? I'm negligent.
Yeah, that I
was absent. How could this happen under my watch?
Right.
I'm a bad parent. So don't take things personal. Just put the health of your child first. The rest will come later. Number two, talk to the child. Don't penalize them or threaten them, because already they're in another mental state. So be gentle with them, so that they can be able to be free or open to an intervention. And then definitely you have to practice what you preach in the home. You have to make that environment conducive for everybody so that they don't look like they're the ones with a condition.
Yeah.
So everyone has to eat different because
and
of you.
Eat are different.
Exactly. So there's a uniformity. But it is very important to seek professional help.
How then do we ensure that a child who's gone through anorexia or bulimia has a wholesome healing experience?
Best intervention would be identifying the professionals who will work with you during this journey.
Okay.
You need the pediatrician, you need a nutritionist, you need a psychologist, so that they can be able to address the specific issues that have risen. Say the child is in physically is or medically is in a situation that is dire.
Okay.
Then the doctor will intervene by guiding in the right way medically. Yeah?
So for children, starting from a pediatrician.
Yes.
What's the youngest age, by the way, you've seen of a child struggling with eating disorders?
9 years.
9 years, you mentioned.
9 years. 9
Right.
years. 9 years.
That's pretty young, huh?
Very young.
That's pretty young.
Very concerning. Very hurtful. You can't imagine what the child is going through, and even the parent.
Yeah.
So you have your medical doctor. You also have your nutritionist who will guide you. What are these foods that you need? Remember, your body has taken a beating. You have withheld nutrients from the body, so you have your bone structure that is challenged. You have your circulatory system, your cardiovascular system, which includes the brain. That nutritionist will be able to come up with a meal or a diet plan for that child long term, and also to emphasize why they need to eat these foods, because the child needs to understand, or you need to reprogram how they perceive food. That's the role of the nutritionist. Right. And definitely a psychologist, a mental health expert is there to understand why has this happened in the first place. Has the child gone through trauma in the past? Is the child being teased because of their weight? They will go to the bottom of what led to this situation, and those three experts will help the child, the parents, on a successful journey to get the child over the eating disorders. That is what I would, that's the best approach.
It is good that you've mentioned that it's something that a family can overcome.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's something that many parents out there going through this will be happy to hear.
Yes.
So your word of advice as we wind up, or word of encouragement for a parent out there with a child struggling with an eating disorder?
Take heart. You're doing well as a parent. Encourage your child in the right direction. And even spending some time with a child. Don't miss out. Be there for that child. You may have a busy schedule, but always make time for the child to feel wanted, to feel loved, because most of these issues are emotional. And when there's an emotional gap, it can end up being so complicated and hard. Yes, exactly.
That comes up from out of all this.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's what I'd recommend.
Thank you so much for coming to share.
Thank you.
I know eating disorders is something that we don't talk about enough, especially in this country. And most likely we don't even have the statistics.
True.
And for sure, in your experience, you've seen that children are affected, our teens are being affected. And I know with these tips, there's a parent out there who's going to be helped by what you have shared.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, we come to the end of today's episode of Today's Parent. We were talking about eating disorders in children and in teens. If you're struggling with eating disorders, or if your child is struggling with eating disorders, I hope you found this show to be useful. And the one thing that Nkatha, the nutritionist, has said, keep communication open, keep your children close. Let's try to be present in their lives so we can notice when there's a miss somewhere. And don't be afraid to seek professional help. It is the help that most likely eventually you will need. I have been your host, Christine Kasina. We've been here in studio at Little Cribs, the home of fun, durable, and affordable kids furniture. If you're looking for parenting resources, go to www.supermamas.co.ke. We look forward to having you in our next show. See you next time.